Good evening from Farm Table, everyone. Glad to have you with us. My name is Mike Scott. I'm the Program Director and Director of Community Partnerships here. And it's always fun to gather with Terry. Terry Kelzer, one of our favorite instructors here at Farm Table over the years. As many of you know, you've taken classes with her before. Tonight, we're going to be talking about Apple Strudel. And as many of you know, our mission is really to reconnect all of us to local food, local places, local farms, and the land, and to kind of rekindle those kinds of connections. And one of the ways we can do that is through remembering, because many of us have this in our roots, how to cook from scratch. And that's one of the things that Terry delights in doing, and obviously is very good at. And also has been, really kind of almost homesteading there when she and her husband moved there in the 70s. And grew so much of their own food. So she really connects to our mission in that way too. So it's a delight to have you all here, folks. I hope you enjoy it. And again.
All right, thank you. Welcome, everyone. Welcome to Apple Strudel. I read this week a really nice thing. It said, Apple Strudel is the trifecta of desserts. It's fun to say, Apple Strudel, fun to eat, and trust me on this, it's fun to make. All right, going out on a bit of a limb here, but I will say that it could be considered easier than making an apple pie. Our homemade strudel dough is a tender marvel of kitchen chemistry, and it's an extraordinarily extendable sheet of flour, water, oil, and vinegar, and that's our basic ingredient. Recipes vary by culture and over the centuries. Apple strudel is considered German, Austrian. Actually, the Austrian people claim it as their national dessert. And the earliest known recipe is a handwritten recipe in the Vienna Library dated 1696 for apple strudel. It varies in the ingredients a little bit. Some people use an egg. Some people think an egg is a travesty. An egg is working towards getting you a little fluffiness in your dough. Some people use butter. Some people prefer oil in the dough. And bread flour is the flour that we're going to use today, and it's generally accepted as the best for this because it's high gluten content and you want stretchy dough. So we're going to, first I'll give you a little idea of equipment you need. Do you need a food processor? You can do it without. Of course, it's been done for 100 years without a food processor. Food processors like this weren't really invented until, I think, like about 1950. A famous chef, Bernard Lavoisier, invented the food processor. He was famous for, not that you really care, but it's just an interesting point. He's famous for inventing this. He had 3 Michelin stars, and when he lost a star, the dear man killed himself. So that's kind of too bad. But so it's a wonderful machine, and it's French, and then everything else we're going to do is kind of Austro-German. First of all, I'll also tell you, when you're making strudel, there's some things you want to do ahead. You want to have your apples cut and set aside. They're ready to put in. You want breadcrumbs toasted. What I did was grind up my loaf of bread from last week and toasted it in the oven. And so I have my breadcrumbs ready. I have my raisins plumped. You want to soften raisins. You don't want to just take them out of the package because they're usually kind of a little bit hard already. And then if you bake them again, a lot of times, especially if some spill out, they just get like rocks. But if you plump them, which is just to soak them in some water, 15, 20 minutes, they plump right up. And then additionally, as we're going to do tonight, we added some rum to our raisins. And when I started doing this years ago, I just put the raisins in a bowl and covered them with rum, but I did find that was a bit strong. So now I cover my raisins with water, and then I add maybe a half a cup of rum to it, and then it soaks in, and it gives a little extra flavor. So we want our raisins soaked and our walnuts chopped, and then if you're going to use the icing on top, it's good to have that all done too. So we're going to start with our recipe. Now, I believe you have a recipe that says 2 1/4 cups of bread flour. And it's supposed to be 2 3/4 cups of bread flour. And I don't know why I've had that because it's something with my glasses I didn't see when I was transposing. But we're going to put our bread flour in the mixer. And we have 1/4 cup of softened butter. The reason it really does help to have a food processor. I noticed when I gave a class to the German club, one of the members went straight from my house to buy a food processor, and they embarked on making strudel for the rest of the year. As I recall, they were very excited to do that. Now we're just gonna, takes about 30 seconds, and you blend the flour and the butter. And just check that you didn't have any lumps. If you did it all by hand, it'd be quite time consuming. Then we're going to take a 2-cup measure, in which we're going to put in a whole egg. And then we're going to fill it, first mix up the egg. Just mix it up with a fork. And then we're going to fill it to the 1-cup line. I tried to get out some of my German pictures and things. This one is a special little water pitcher which says to put your father's wine in this pitcher. He will think you're drinking water. So, I thought that was pretty cute. Then we're going to, now we take this out. Now when I'm using the steel blade, when sometimes I will just because it's going to be a little faster, but sometimes I will do the butter and flour with the steel blade. I will take the steel blade out and then put in the bread blade, which is a softer plastic, and it doesn't break up the gluten. You want your gluten active and strong. So having a little connection on this here. This. And you see it comes right up to a beautiful ball. We're going to let it go for about 30 seconds. Now, a little bit A little bit sticky, not much. I'm going to add just about a tablespoon more of flour. And that's all. And then you can see really just a nice, supple, really nice dough. Now, if you can see that, that's step one. Step one. And then you can we'll move all this out. Oh, I forgot the salt and the vinegar. Oh, well. Do put that in with your water mixture. Step two, please don't forget it. The vinegar will help it stretch so it doesn't come back. Okay, follow the recipe. Part two, this is very good. This is where you don't need a psychiatrist anymore. You work out all your emotions, all your problems. This is called, step two is flail. You flail this dough 100 times. So you begin, and I'm going to move over to here, and I think everybody can see this table all right, because it's a little too loud on this portable table. And we do like this. Now if it spreads out, then bring it together. 10. We're really working up the gluten, making it as strong as we can. I try to count in my head, but I'm terrible at that, so I got my daughter on counting. This worked really good when you're like a Swede married to a German. Needed a lot.
So Terry, you're actually strengthening
Yes.
the gluten?
You're working it up. If you skip the flailing, it's just not going to work.
Hey, Terry, we do have another important question, and Monica wonders if it works just as well or is just as important if you're married to a Norwegian.
It might be more so.
Time to go.
6, 7, 8, 9, 10.
And we're done.
100. So it doesn't take that long. Really, 100 sounds like a lot, but it goes, I timed myself, I did 3 today. And I mean, 4 minutes. Not bad. Work out all your aggressions, any problems. Good thing to do. All right. Now, it has to rest because we got it, if anything, it's a little overexcited. So I'm going to take.
How long would you want it to rest?
We want it to rest 2 hours. And this one has just been resting exactly 2 hours. I put it in a bag. You can also put it in a bowl, cover it with a little oil. I find it's hard to get completely covered if you miss one little spot, it'll kind of get some dry part of your dough, and that will bother you when you're getting to the rolling out stage. Now, the next equipment that you need is a good cloth. I use this, I have a flannel blanket that I've used for years and years for this, and it's wonderful. And then and people traditionally use like a tablecloth or um, anything that's firm and heavy that you can rely on to hold your dough steady. This flannel sheet I found is the best. So what we're going to do is put our dough in the center. A little melted butter. I'm going to put just a little bit of melted butter on it. And then I won't need that for a while. Okay. Select a good heavy rolling pin. Let me see. Maybe this one. Good heavy rolling pin. And you want to roll it first as thin as you can. Don't want excess butter on there. All right. You want to center it in your cloth. And then we're going to roll it out first as thin as we can.
So just the butter, no flour or anything.
You shouldn't need any more. We kind of want to be centered. If people can see, let's see. There you go. You can see we have a stretchy dough. Look at a bit more. That should be good. Now we start our stretching process. It's no jewelry. Long fingernails are not a good thing either. And you want to start reaching under and you want to start stretching. I'm gonna just get under it and pull it. Just keep pulling. I have a story of a lady that I met when I was at Head Start who came from Bosnia. Her family had a restaurant there. And one day she was helping me in the kitchen. The local church brought a lot of refugees here after the war. And so she was kind of learning English and helping me. And one day she came in and asked if she could possibly make her national dish for us. And of course I said that would be wonderful. And so the next day she came with a big flowered tablecloth and a big long, like a broomstick. And she made this simple dough and let it rest. And then she put it on her stick. And then she just started spinning it around like this. And it kept getting bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger until it like covered our whole entire counter. And it was just amazing. All the kids were totally amazed, and so was I. It was so beautiful. I'm afraid to use a stick myself. I think I'd kill somebody, but maybe if there wasn't anybody else in the kitchen, I'd try.
Terry, we have a couple of questions about the dough. Would a Lefse board with a canvas cover work for rolling the strudel out?
It could, but the whole idea is you need a big surface. And I suppose you could move it off of that.
And what about if you start with a new piece of flannel? How do you avoid getting fabric in the dough?
Usually, this already has flour in it. I had rubbed flour in today. So I guess I skipped that part. I had rubbed flour into this when I made an earlier strudel. Now we're going to have to just start stretching. And what she made, her national dish was with honey and walnuts, kind of like baklava, but then she rolled it up. And then she also made a savory one with ground meat and onions and herbs, and also rolled that up. Historically, making these kind of like thin pastries has served for the poorer people in the world to stretch out things like flour when it was an expensive commodity if you weren't a farmer growing your own. And it also stretched out the filling so that a smaller amount of meat would, and with the combination of the dough, would still be a filling supper.
And Julia asks about the flour. Is it a bread flour or?
Yes, and of course, in other parts of the world, they will. Bread flour isn't that common. They use what would be similar to our all-purpose, but it requires a little patience, and we're getting thin.
Terry, if you didn't flail the dough, would it start ripping apart? You're trying to get it that thin?
Probably, yes. And you're going to get little dings and holes as it is, but you just, when it rolls up, it kind of covers the imperfections if you would have some there. Now we're just I'm gonna try to go and then pull. We go here and pull. I'm getting a little bit bigger. Is Linus outside?
No, he's in the living room.
Oh, well, he can come in to get back. Now, what often we'll do is work yourself around and
So how big do you want to stretch it to?
you want to stretch it as big as you possibly can. And what I'm going to do here is switch myself around. You should be working around the table. We want it to hang over the table. And you can kind of see the dark, and I don't know if that shows up very well. The darker spots are darker, are thicker, and the lighter spots, of course, are thinner, where you can see more of your thing through. And I guess patience is a virtue. But it's a kind of an exciting thing to make. It's something I've always enjoyed. I first came across the recipe. Oh, this is I got this out because it was the first time I made it, was my 1964 edition of Joy of Cooking. And I thought, boy, that sounds really cool. I'm going to try it. And I did. And
Turn it again for this one.
yeah, let me get this. I think I can just start to drape this down the edge of the table here. And just pull it out. And we'll pull it out. And we'll just pull it out. There's a little, okay, now we'll flip it. Usually I don't exactly do it like this. I walk around the table, so we don't want it to roll back on itself. Okay.
Camera purposes.
Yep. So I'm going to pull from the center, pull it.
Terry, did you say you want to drape it over the edge of the table a little bit? And if so,
Yeah,
why?
that's good because that just means you're doing a good job stretching. We're still a little bit thick here. Pull that out.
Yeah, Terry, and if you do make a hole in it, do you try and cover that up?
No. No. I watch these master ones from Austria making 4 strudels an hour or 10 strudels an hour, and they just, it all just rolls right up. No problem. Besides, that would kind of make it so that you would put dough on top of dough and make it thicker again. So now we're getting close. The old adage is that you should be able to read a newspaper through the dough. The one I read this week, it was so sweet. It said you should be able to read a love letter through it. Of course, they don't have any love letters, but we can read. It's probably not going to show up, but it's thin enough that I can read the words here. Instead of my love letter, I have my 2 years ago, every year I get a Christmas letter from Marjorie Johnson, and I don't know if you're familiar with, she's 100 years old, baking lady. She's amazing. And we used to do classes and things together years ago. And she always sends me letters. This one, like being in Hollywood and having a limousine take her to all these cooking shows, and it's very fun to get her letters. Yeah, let him out. The poor dog doesn't know we're having a cooking show. All right. Now, you want to take a scissor and you trim off the ends. Yeah, like this stuff I always come before. Because the ends will be thick. And you want to have your oven hot while you're doing this, and everything is ready to put right in. Because this part we just did is what takes the longest. Now, butter, melted butter. We're going to do our finish. We're going to butter it. Now, I believe on your recipe, and I'm not sure, does it say to cook your apples ahead?
I'll take
I had always done that, and it isn't like I cooked them a lot. I just would saute them to get some of the moisture off the apples, because I didn't want a lot of apple juice. You know, the problem you have with apple pie is it's not making the pie, it's all the apple pie juices coming out and stinking up your oven and all that. So I've always, you know, when I see apples, I always want to get them somewhat a little bit dry. But they don't do that in Austria. What they do is they count on breadcrumbs to absorb the extra apple juices. And so you put down a good little amount of breadcrumbs. So this is really the first time that I haven't cooked the apples first. And I also slice them quite thinly. Previous, I would kind of do a thicker chop with my apples. But I found this works perfect. I mean, people have been doing it 100 years. You should listen to them, right? Not go off on my own. All right, first we put down that. Now, I have walnuts ground up, and I'm going to sprinkle walnuts throughout here.
Yeah, Terry, Monica said that the recipe does talk about cooking your apples first.
And it's an option. It's something I've done for years and years and years. It does take off the moisture, and I did not put breadcrumbs in first, and that took care of that. Also, if you don't want to make your own breadcrumbs, you could use like panko or some of those. They're dry and crispy, and they will hold the moisture nicely. Then we have our apples. Usually you want maybe kind of a tart apple, but these I have are kind of actually a sweet apple. And they're sliced thin. And we want to make just like a little roll of apples. There's about 8 apples that I sliced up here.
One row.
And you can kind of, you want to put them on pretty thick. You got that?
Terry, Julia's mom was from Austria, and she says, yeah, my mom never cooked the apples and also used breadcrumbs.
Right.
And then Monica had a question about how many breadcrumbs do you need, or
well, a cup or so to sprinkle. And then here are my rum raisins. And of course you can leave them out. If I was making this for my husband, I wouldn't dare put any raisins in at all. Okay. Now we're going to just pick up our first little part here and kind of just fold it over there a little bit. Put that in. Then we use our cloth. And we just roll it up. Okay, do you want to bring me the And if you can see, let me see. Okay, there's our roll. And then we're going to roll it right onto our prepared pan here. And we're going to just tuck it like so. And I'll need more melted butter.
Beautiful.
Is that both eggs and butter in that?
No, it's just melted butter.
Okay.
It got a little thick because the melted butter is cooling down since I melted it.
Okay,
Yeah, and then I just have a parchment paper here, which is nice to get the juices. And then we have our oven ready at 400 degrees for about 40 minutes. And I'm going to bring this over.
This is where we all get a piece, right, Terry?
Right? And everybody gets a piece, yes. And we're going to slice it. Let's see, camera. You want to grab that cream. Now you serve it. It's traditional to have it with a glop of ice cream. If you had a little vanilla custard sauce, it would not be out of line to pour that over the top. And then a little dollop of whipped cream on it. And we should be ready to eat. Oh, what I should say, what I did when it comes out of the oven is I put on a glaze, just icing sugar and a little cream, and mix that up. And while it's warm, then I would take it and just frost it, and then it will melt down the sides. And then I sprinkled it with some more walnuts. So, any questions?
Can you remind us the temperature and how long it bakes for?
I'm doing it at 400 for 40 minutes. I think previously I cooked it at 350, and I don't know if that's on your recipe, but I found it browns much better at 400.
I think we're a small enough group too, folks. If you want to unmute yourself to ask a question, you could try that as well, or else you can type it into the chat box.
And you can kind of see the layers. There are several layers of pastry here that and with anything, it's practice and that you get better at. I don't make it all the time, so maybe once a year. But the more you make it, the better you get.
Terry, when you're making lefse, don't you have to make that very thin too, and there's a special rolling pin for that, right?
Right.
Could you use a similar rolling pin to try and get it thinner rather than all by hand?
You can get it a bit thinner, but I wouldn't. This is going to, I don't like. You don't want the lines. Actually, you use the rolling pin as little as possible, and you stretch it. You can try to go as thin as you want with a rolling pin, sure. It's all up to you what you want to do.
When Maggie just wrote in, Terry, my daughter and I learned how to make amazing lefse from you as well.
Oh, nice.
Big fan of yours. Would you consider a class on baklava? She says.
Oh, of course, that's my actually, I've been making baklava for years and years and years, more than any other single dessert. I think I started off making baklava when I was young and working, and at a restaurant that I worked at, and they assigned me to baklava. That's all they trusted me with at first, and then I gradually got to make some other things, but that's with phyllo sheets. And phyllo sheets can be way more annoying than this. You never know how they're going to be. You don't know how long they've been on the shelf in the store. It's a wonderful dessert, and I always think that that's what got me my job at Head Start, as there were other cooks applying, and you know, like when you interview for a job, they have, I just thought it was just a little job. I had 12 people interviewing me, and one of the head teachers said, you don't happen to know how to make baklava? And I said, of course I know how to make baklava. And I think I was the only cook who answered that question, and they probably didn't think it would come up in an interview for Head Start, but I always credited that because this particular teacher who asked that question had a special love for baklava. And we did feature it almost every year. We did ethnic meals every year, and of course around Easter, and have special dishes, and would always make a baklava. And then we had a dentist who happened to come one day to give a little presentation on for the little kids on how to take care of their teeth, and he happened to be there, and he couldn't believe the baklava. He just loved it so much that every year after that, for 15, 20 years, he was also an actor in a local play group, and he would at opening night, he would always order a pan of baklava and bring it for the cast and crew for opening night. And I always had to cut one little corner so he could have it right away in the car, because he couldn't stand to get that far away and just look at it and smell it. So my baklava stories are pretty fun.
It would be maybe that would be a good one to do when we can all gather together in person again. That would be a lot of fun.
Yes, because I've also for like the last 10 years made baklava for the running club, New Richmond Running Club, for their annual banquet. And every January, February, I always buy like 2-3 boxes of phyllo sheets, because you never know the condition. And sometimes they're all stuck together, and it's just a nightmare. And then every once in a while they'll come apart and everything will be lovely. So it's
Terry,
interesting.
Yeah, Terry, Julia also has another question about this recipe in terms, do you ever try other fillings? And if so, what?
Very good question, yes. Traditionally, a strudel could have a cherry filling in season. Apples in season now. Also, they do savory fillings. I've read of a potato filling, and also in Austria there's one called Topf Strudel, and that's with cream cheese. So yeah, they use of course, let your imagination be your guide, and any fruits, any mixture of fruits that you think will hold together, and I'm sure it would be very good.
One of the neat things I like to point out on a slightly different but related topic is that the flour that Terry used tonight was some Sunrise Flour Mill, and I mentioned that, but
yeah, we went by it kind of quickly, and this is out of North Branch, Minnesota. Wonderful organic bread flour. It's just a beautiful flour, and it's a bread flour blend. Gerald and Marty Glanville, and I know they've given many classes at the farm table on sourdough. And I think at the farm table we use all their flours, and they have several. I like their whole wheat also, and bread flour and a pastry flour. It's really nice flours, and they're local, they're organic, they're healthy. Often people who do not do well with commercial flours, who do have gluten problems, eating a really good organic flour can make a lot of difference, where you wouldn't have to go to gluten-free.
Yeah, that's right. The founders of this mill, Daryl and Marty, teach sourdough often at farm table, but Daryl was having severe problems with gluten, and yet he really missed the great breads that he enjoyed, particularly when they traveled in Europe, and that he made. And so he's been able to eat bread made with this flour, and they suspect it's partly because of both that it's organic as well as heritage. It's also heritage wheat, so it's not hybridized. And one of the things that, of course, organic wheat is not grown with the glyphosate, which is in Roundup, which can be problematic for folks. And they also find quite a few of their clientele are able to eat this without having problems with the gluten, even though they might with other breads.
And I know of people who have told me that they don't eat bread here. They use substitutes, but they went to France and the bread was looking so wonderful, they decided they weren't going to not eat it. The heck, if I get sick, I get sick. And they ate bread for the whole week they were there, and they never got sick. So they considered that it was part of the preparation, the flour probably, that it's all done a little differently over there, and they take a lot of pride in all the products that they grow.
Which is another way of highlighting local food culture, I think, Terry.
Right.
And that's
Exactly.
Our mission is to build local food culture. And so if you eat out of a place from where you're from, it's more likely that you're going to end up having a healthy diet.
Right.
And last year, a fun fact, we had 4,200 pounds of flour that we used at farm table, and all of it was from Sunrise Flour Mill.
Wow.
Wow.
That's really great.
Beautiful.
Not too bad on time. We're a little quick tonight.
Any other questions, folks, or Terry? Any other stories you want to share about strudel or anything else?
Everyone, go and try to make yourself a strudel. Don't forget to put the vinegar in. It's just a tablespoon. That helps the stretching so it doesn't go back on itself. When you stretch it out, it stays where you put it. And I did have that in all my other doughs. I don't know why I made 3 doughs today, but I did. I really did give myself a workout today with 400 flails. So I should be mentally quite balanced for a while.
Well, and I also wanted Angela, to thank you folks. Terry's daughter, Angela, has been helping out tonight. So we really appreciate your help, Angela.
Thanks, Mike.
Yeah.
Thanks, everyone.
I'm glad you can enjoy the strudel.
Yeah.
We're going to love it.
Yeah. Well, folks, I don't see any other questions coming in. Oh, do you put any butter over the dough before resting it?
No. Well, you can, or a little oil. I used a little sunflower oil today before I put it in the bag. I just put a little on my hands, put a little in the bag, and then put the dough in. But sunflower oil also works really well. This is some extra virgin sunflower cold pressed. And I really like that oil also. And I usually use that apple cider vinegar.
Great. And as I mentioned in the chat too, everyone, I'll send a recording out of this class. Our YouTube channel has this class as well as the 50 or so other classes we've had this summer. So I'll send a link to the YouTube once that's ready, and I'll resend the recipe, and it will have the corrected amount of flour on it.
And our next class is going to be Lefse.
Yes, thank you for mentioning that, Terry. So November 17, I believe we have our Lefse class with Terry. It's a kind of a holiday tradition now at Farm Table to do that with Terry. And you'll find more information about that on our website, which I'll type in a minute. And one of the neat things we're offering for that class too, if you're interested, we have a Lefse kit we can put together for you, where you got the potatoes and the cream and so on, and the flour all in a bag for you. You can of course get it on your own, but if you'd like to support some local farmers and get a kit from us for the Lefse, we can do that too.
Okay.
All right, everybody. Well, thank you for joining us. And Terry and Angela, thank you so much. Enjoy your strudel there for dinner.
Yeah.
And breakfast and lunch.
And lunch and, dinner tomorrow night.
Yeah.
And the bears out back.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thanks for joining us, everybody. Have a good evening. Stay safe. Take care.
Yeah. Nice.
Thank you.